All right, let's dive into a video you guys sent in comparing Overwatch and Team Fortress 2. But through a lens we don't often see, food.
Yeah, this video, it's a unique way to look at how these games feel rather than, just the technical stuff.
Okay, so this video's main analogy is that Overwatch is like baking a gourmet cake, while TF2 is more like enjoying a candy bar. So let's break those down.
Yeah, the cake analogy for Overwatch, it highlights how each player kind of has a specific role, like ingredients in a recipe. You've got tanks protecting the team,
Yeah.
DPS, damage dealers, who they dish out the damage, and then the supports who keep everyone healed up. Just like with a cake, if one ingredient's off, the whole thing can just fall apart.
Yeah, that makes total sense. I can definitely relate to that feeling of frustration when you've got that one teammate who's just not, pulling their weight. It's like they forgot the baking powder and now your cake is totally flat. But the video also mentions that this teamwork focus, that's what makes the big wins in Overwatch feel so rewarding.
Exactly. When everyone is in sync and executing their roles,
Yeah.
perfectly, Overwatch just creates these truly epic moments.
Mm-hmm.
Think about those perfectly timed ultimate abilities.
Yeah.
Like when everyone on the team combines their powers for a massive push.
Yeah.
It's satisfying in a way that few other games can match.
Yeah, it's like you've all orchestrated this incredible symphony of destruction. Speaking of ultimates, for anyone who hasn't played Overwatch, those are like super powered moves, special moves that each hero can build up to. And when they're used effectively, they can just, completely turn the tide of battle. But this heavy reliance on teamwork, it seems like it could be a double-edged sword.
It definitely is.
Yeah.
Because while the highs are incredibly high, the lows, oh, they can be brutal. If you're relying on, random teammates online, well, let's just say things don't always go according to plan.
Oh, I know it. I've had my share of matches where it feels like my team is intentionally trying to throw the game. But even with those frustrating moments, the video points out that we Overwatch players. We keep coming back for more. It's like that restaurant that serves amazing food half the time, but the other half, you get food poisoning.
That's an interesting comparison. I think it speaks to just how addictive that perfectly coordinated team play can be. When it works, it's just so satisfying. And even that potential for frustration, it can be part of the appeal.
Okay, so that's Overwatch, the gourmet cake. But what about TF2? Where does the candy bar analogy come in?
Well, TF2 takes a very different approach. It's much more about individual play and having fun right away. Each of the 9 classes, from the rocket jumping soldier to the bomb tossing demon, they're designed to be enjoyable on their own without needing a ton of coordination with others.
Yeah, it's like you can just pick a class that looks cool and jump right in. And even when players try to, get all tactical and team focused, the video argues that TF2 itself, it often throws wrenches in the works.
Right. The objectives tend to be a lot more chaotic, with teams constantly clashing and respawning all over the place. It makes for a more free-flowing, unpredictable experience where individual skill and quick thinking often take center stage. Even trying to push a payload as a team can just devolve into this wild brawl.
But hold on, doesn't the need for a coordinated push on the payload kind of contradict that? How does that fit into the candy bar analogy?
That's a great question. And it shows that even in a game known for its individual play, well, some level of teamwork is still required to achieve certain objectives. Maybe it's like a candy bar that comes with a little prize inside. You get that instant gratification of the chocolate, but then there's also that added satisfaction of putting together that little toy.
Oh, I like that. So maybe the analogy isn't saying that TF2 is purely solo, but rather that it offers a lot more freedom and flexibility compared to Overwatch's, stricter team-focused structure.
Yeah, I think that's a more nuanced way to look at it. It's
Yeah.
about understanding that even within the candy bar experience, there are, different levels of depth and complexity.
Okay, so we've got the team-focused gourmet cake of Overwatch and the more individually driven candy bar of TF2. But this video, it goes beyond that basic comparison. It also delves into things like customization and community content, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And those are key areas where the two games really diverge even further.
All right, well, let's save that delicious discussion for part 2. I'm already hungry for more.
It's interesting to think about how these different approaches, like the gourmet cake versus the candy bar, they might actually impact how long a game, stays popular.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, TF2's been around forever, and it still has this huge, dedicated community.
Exactly. And I think part of that is because TF2 is just so open-ended. It's like Valve, the company that made TF2, they just gave players this box of Legos and said, go build whatever you want.
And they did. This video talks about all the amazing stuff the community created in TF2, like crazy game modes, custom maps, even entirely new weapons.
It's really amazing what happens when you give players that level of creative control. Creates a sense of, ownership and investment in the game that you just don't get with, more tightly controlled experiences.
Right. You're not just playing TF2, you're contributing to its, evolution. It's constantly changing and growing thanks to the community. Whereas Overwatch, with its focus on balance and a consistent competitive experience, it feels a bit more, I don't know, contained.
Contained, yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. Overwatch is like a beautifully manicured garden, Everything's in its place, carefully designed and maintained, which is great for those who appreciate that kind of polish and control.
Totally. I can definitely see the appeal of that, but I do sometimes wonder if that tight control kind of limits Overwatch's potential for long-term, growth, especially when you compare it to TF2, which is constantly being reshaped and reinvented by its players.
Yeah, it's a fascinating trade-off, isn't it? On one hand, you have Overwatch's focus on this polished, balanced experience, and on the other, you have TF2 embracing this community-driven chaos and creativity, which brings us to that other key difference the video highlights, customization.
Yeah.
TF2 is all about letting players tweak and fine-tune their experience.
Yeah, the video uses this analogy of customizing your favorite fruit, which I thought was pretty clever.
It is. It really captures that idea that you can take something you love, like say an apple, and then just experiment with different ways to enjoy it. Applesauce, apple pie, apple crumble. The core ingredients the same, but you have the freedom to add your own personal touch.
And that's exactly what TF2 does with its classes. Each one has a ton of different weapons and items that you can, mix and match to create your own unique play style.
Exactly. Take the Daemon, for example. You can be a sticky bomb expert, controlling choke points, grenade launching, artillery specialist, or even a sword-wielding melee fighter, all within that one class.
Which is like the opposite of Overwatch, where you're basically stuck with a hero's base kit. It's like going to a restaurant with a fixed menu. You can choose from a variety of dishes, but you can't make any substitutions or special requests.
And that's where the video makes that hilarious comparison of, asking for customization in Overwatch and being given a brick or a durian fruit.
Laughed out loud at that one. But it does make you think about that fundamental difference in philosophy, TF2 embraces player expression and experimentation, while Overwatch seems more focused on maintaining a consistent competitive experience across the board.
Yeah, and both approaches have their merits.
Yeah.
Overwatch's focus on balance ensures that every hero and every ability has a clear purpose and a defined role within the overall game. It creates a very strategic and competitive environment where mastering those nuances can be incredibly rewarding.
Oh, for sure. I can definitely see the skill involved in becoming a top-tier Overwatch player. But on the other hand, there's something to be said for the sheer joy of experimentation that TF2 offers.
Yeah, it's about finding that perfect loadout, discovering a new strategy, or just having fun messing around with all the crazy possibilities.
So it sounds like both games have their strengths and weaknesses when it comes to, customization. But what about the actual gameplay itself? Is one just inherently better than the other?
Well, that's a tough question to answer. It really depends on what you're looking for in a game. Some people thrive in Overwatch's, structured, team-focused environment where precision and coordination are key. Others prefer TF2's more chaotic and unpredictable style, where individual skill and quick thinking can often win the day.
Well, TF2 might seem more laid back on the surface. I imagine there's still a surprising amount of skill involved in mastering each class.
Absolutely. TF2 might not emphasize coordinated team play as much as Overwatch, but it demands a different kind of mastery. It's about understanding the intricacies of each class's, movement, weapon mechanics, and unique abilities, and then using those skills to outmaneuver and outsmart your opponents.
Plus, there's the whole element of mind games that comes with classes like the Spy and the Pyro.
Right. You're constantly trying to anticipate your opponent's moves, predict their strategies and stay, one step ahead. It's a very different kind of challenge than Overwatch, but it's no less demanding.
So even though the candy bar experience might seem, I don't know, simpler on the surface, it seems like there's a lot more to TF2 than meets the eye.
Precisely. It's a game that rewards both individual skill and a deep understanding of the game's, subtle nuances. And that's something that both TF2 and Overwatch offer, albeit in very different ways.
This deep dive has really got me thinking about all the different, I don't know, flavors of fun that games can offer. It's not just about picking a winner, It's more about appreciating the unique strengths of each game and finding what speaks to you personally.
Well said. And speaking of personal preferences, the video creator does ultimately say what their favorite is, TF2 for relaxed fun. And Overwatch for those times when they're craving that intense coordinated team play experience.
That makes sense, but this video makes me wonder if these flavors of fun are just limited to video games. Do these patterns, the gourmet cake versus the candy bar, did they pop up in other parts of life too?
Now that's a fascinating question, and one we should definitely explore further. But I think we need to save that delicious discussion for part 3.
Okay, so we're back and ready to tackle that question from part 2. Do these gourmet cake and candy bar approaches, do they exist outside of video games?
It's a really interesting thought, isn't it? I think it absolutely applies to other areas of life. Like consider work environments, for example.
Oh, yeah, okay. I could see that. Some jobs definitely feel like that Overwatch team, where everyone's got their super specialized role and the pressure's on to perform perfectly.
Exactly. Think about fields like surgery, where every member of the team has to be, perfectly in sync, or high-stakes business negotiations where each person has a specific role in closing the deal. When those teams, when they click, it's like watching a well-oiled machine. But the stress can be, intense.
Yeah, totally. And just like in Overwatch, if one person messes up, it can have this ripple effect on the whole team. But what about the candy bar side of things? Where do we see that more free-flowing, individualistic approach in the real world?
Well, creative fields like art, music, or writing immediately come to mind. These are areas where individual expression and experimentation and the freedom to explore are really valued.
It's like that TF2 philosophy of just jumping in and seeing what happens, right? Not being afraid to try new things or even mess up along the way.
Exactly. It's about embracing the unknown and trusting your instincts.
Yeah.
Rather than, always trying to achieve this predetermined outcome.
And I bet those candy bar environments, they can be super rewarding in their own way. Like you get to discover your own style and express yourself without the pressure of, having to follow all these rigid rules.
Absolutely. It's about finding that joy in the process of creation itself, rather than, just focusing on the end result. But it's not without its challenges, Navigating a world with unlimited possibilities can be kind of overwhelming. And it takes a lot of self-discipline and motivation to stay focused.
Yeah, that makes sense. Too much freedom can be paralyzing sometimes. So maybe it's not about saying one approach is better than the other, right? It's more about understanding the trade-offs and finding what works for you, in different situations.
Yeah, I think that's the key takeaway here. There's a time and a place for both the gourmet cake and the candy bar approaches in life. It's about recognizing the value of each and being mindful of which mindset is most helpful in a given situation.
So maybe the real challenge is finding that sweet spot, that perfect balance of structure and freedom.
Exactly. And who knows, maybe that's the secret to a truly fulfilling and satisfying life, just like a perfectly balanced meal, with a mix of healthy and indulgent choices.
Wow, this deep dive has really given us a lot to think about. We started with a simple video comparing 2 video games, and we ended up exploring, like the nature of teamwork and creativity and how those concepts play out in the real world.
It really is amazing how seemingly simple things like a video game or a food analogy, they can spark such profound insights.
And that's what the Deep Dive is all about, taking those seemingly simple things and diving deep to uncover those hidden layers of complexity and meaning.
So keep sending us those intriguing articles, videos, podcasts, whatever sparks your curiosity. We'll be here ready to explore those depths with you.
Until then, keep those minds engaged, and we'll catch you on the next Deep Dive.